Koshi asked me to give a brief presentation on the process of designing math tours. So we're going to not just talk the talk. We are, of course, going to walk the walk. And here are the different points about creating a math tour that I want to cover. I'm going to go fairly quickly because I know it's been a long morning for some of you, and we need to be respectful of the wonderful space that we've been donated here today. So we're going to talk about walking the walk. We're going to talk about looking at the world with fresh eyes. And that's what we're trying to have our participants do, so we need to do it ourselves. It's important to brainstorm lots of questions. It's the questions that drive the creation of the talk. We want to use both the natural and the built environments. I would urge you to trust your observations. When you're there in the space, you'll see things and go with what you see. Over time, you'll develop a toolkit. And then for the final walk that you're going to present, like the ones we talked today, you're going to edit, rinse, and repeat, and we'll talk about what that means. So we'll go through these in order. And when I say walk the walk, I mean when you're designing a tour, you need to go and be in the space that you're going to be presenting to other people, and you need to really get a deep sense of that space to make the walk connected with the place in the world that you wanted to be connected with. So you can do a walk almost anywhere in the world. We would get clients to say, we'd like the walk to start just outside our corporate offices, and we want it to end up at this pub where all the people hang out afterwards. Or we want it to start at the museum offices, and we want it to end up in Madison Square Park, or wherever it might be. We want it to be down by Google. We want it to be, and so on, up in the Central Park, wherever it might be. So this is a particular walk. I'm going to try to give examples of these things that was slated to start. This is the Church of the Transfiguration on 29th Street in Manhattan, and this was going to be the starting point of a tour that actually in the end didn't pan out. We never actually gave this tour, but this is going to be the starting point. And I went and I actually sat in a bench. You can't quite see it in the picture. It's just to the right of and behind the kind of pagoda, you might almost call it. That's the entranceway to this churchyard. And I sat on that bench for literally 2 hours, just taking in the space. And I'm not saying you should feel like you have to just sit there and spend that time. I'm saying don't be in a hurry. As long as you're observing new things, just go ahead and take the time to observe the space around you. So by the end of that 2 hours, I had cataloged every type of arch in the courtyard. You can see 3 or 4 of them in this picture. There's more that you can't see. I'd look at the symmetries of the repeating pattern in the fence. I'd measure the entryway roof, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to read this whole thing. But I had sat there and I wondered if there was such a thing as a trapezoid pyramid and what its properties would be, because I could see, and you can see too, up in the upper right, the top of that building, it kind of looks like a pyramid, but it's got a straight line at the top. So it's like a sort of a cross between a trapezoid and a pyramid, and I thought, wow, is that some kind of new shape, and what would its probably be? So that brings us into the next topic, which is we'll see a little bit asking questions. So the important thing is the questions you ask. Second point is look at the world with fresh eyes. So this is 29th Street. I think that's the cross street up there is Madison. And I challenged myself, and I said, okay, this building, sort of the lighter colored building in the left foreground of this picture, I challenged myself. I said, I'm going to stand here until I observe something new about that building that I haven't noticed before. Now, you have a little bit of advantage because I was down at ground level. This is taken from upper level, so it's kind of easier to see the whole facade of the building. And just take a moment and see if you can notice one unusual thing about that building. That doesn't have to be unusual. One interesting thing about that building maybe has a mathematical bent to it, maybe it doesn't, right? The questions come first, the math comes after, because mathematics is a tool with which we try to answer the questions we have about the world. So who would like to share something that he or she notices about, right here. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the thing that I ended up noticing, was that top course of the building has a different structure than all the other courses of windows of the building. And it's got the thing that really kind of drew my eye to it, and it's, like I said, it's a little harder to see from the ground, is it almost looks like M birds, over those windows, this kind of sequence of arches. But they've got an extra little bounce than an M bird does. But I thought, wow, there's M birds on that building. That's kind of cool. What are those up there for? How could I model those? Are those circular arcs? Are they not circular arcs? Lots of questions come out of that. But then I noticed, so that top course of the windows is different from all the others. And then I noticed all along the street, almost every building, if you look at it, has one or more courses of windows that differ from all the rest. In some of the buildings, it's the bottommost course of windows. In other buildings, it's the topmost course of windows. And in yet other buildings, there's the bottom one and the top one are the same, so they're like parentheses around the structure of the building. I thought that was pretty interesting. So there's patterns in the structure of the windows. And then I noticed, see, it's all and then, like what each thing you notice leads to another observation. On that building, I think you see the one I'm talking about, where the course near the street is very similar to the course at the very top. Those are both very ornate, and they're more plain in the building. It's a little hard to see, but at the very top, there's kind of a repeating horizontal pattern of decoration. And it made me wonder about those repeating horizontal patterns of decoration. I started to see them all over the city, and I learned about what are called the 7 frieze patterns. So there's this 7 types of symmetry that a repeating horizontal pattern can take on. And I then challenged myself, can I find all 7 of these different symmetries? You see, some have only translational symmetry, like number 1 there, whereas others have rotational symmetry, reflection symmetry. You can see that number 7 there has the most symmetry. It's got a bunch of different reflections, a bunch of different rotations. And so there's 7 possible patterns of symmetry that a horizontal decorative pattern can have. They're called the frieze patterns. And that turned that into a challenge that I gave myself, is can I find all 7 of those frieze patterns around the city? And indeed, I was able to, after walking, I only had to walk around like 2 or 3 blocks to find every single one of them, and that became the theme of that tour, which was for the MIT Alumni Club. And so that was a lot of fun. Okay, so like I said, it's those questions. You want to brainstorm lots of different questions. Just ask anything that comes to mind. And it's important in brainstorming, as you know, we don't criticize, we don't judge, we don't filter. We ask every question that comes into our mind. And so I'm going to give you all, well, since we're short on time, I'll give you 30 seconds. Write down a couple of questions. We'll see if among us we can come up with at least 10 different questions about this. This is a building, and I gave it a couple different scenes. It could be anything in the scene. It doesn't have to just be the main building there. This was at Leeds University, which is the site of the Matrix Conference. If you're interested in math outreach, it's a conference run by Cindy and the National Museum of Mathematics. Might be of interest to you. Anyhow, this is where the Matrix Conference was at Leeds University, and I was walking along, I said, wow, too bad I'm not giving a math tour here. This would certainly be a stop on the tour. So just take 30 seconds, write down a couple of questions that come to mind about this scene, anything about the scene, and we'll see if we can gather among us at least 10 different questions that we might ask about this building. They may or may not lead to mathematics, but it's the questions that are as important. They drive the construction of the tours. Okay, I know it's a brief time, but what questions have come to your minds? Okay, one over here. Okay, yeah, why are they different? And yeah, why? Excellent. Right. Exactly. So there's a strong sort of checkerboard pattern on the right. Is that shadows? Is it tints? What's creating that checkerboard? I love that question. What else? Yeah, what kind of triangles are they? Isosceles? Are they equilateral? What triangles do you need? Excellent. Great question. What else? Yeah. How many perforations in a triangle? Great question. A lot of time we ask in mathematics, how many? And then there's lots of different ways to count. There's a whole branch of mathematics called combinatorics, which is just about how to count. What else? Yeah. Yeah, are they perfect squares? Right. Are all 4 edges of those quadrilaterals the same? That's a great question. What else? I think we're at 5 now, I think. So we got 5 more to go, and then you'll be free from, yeah. Yeah, right. In a photograph, even in life, it's hard to tell. Have everybody heard of the Necker cube? Looks like maybe the cube is pointing out toward you or it's sinking into the picture. Which is going on here? Great question. Like your louvers, is there any function or is there any reason they're angled? Are the perforations, are they positioned on purpose other than the yeah. All right, excellent. I'll call that 2 questions. So, why aren't they planar? Right? Basic question there. Why is this building clad? Is there a purpose to it? And furthermore, the perforations, are they angled in a certain way? Is there a reason for that? Great question. All right, just 2 more. I'm sure we can do it. Because I think we could probably come up with 25 if we sat here long enough. But I'm sure we can come up with 2 more questions. Yeah? Yeah, okay, right, exactly. So, if we look at it through just one eye, the pattern will have a little difference because we won't have that depth perception. That's a great question. Perspective is something that's really important and a very mathematical topic that I talk about on a lot of our walks. And one more question. Yeah, right there. Yeah, how many panels on any one side? I think it's a question. How much material did it take to build this building? Let me see the framework on this side. How does that framework hold them up? What does the geometry of the framework have to be to create a non-planar side of a building? So, okay, you can see there's lots of questions you can ask, and that's the kind of thing you want to do is free yourself up. No holds back, no question. There's no such thing as this is a case where there's absolutely no such thing as a stupid question. Why is there space between the panels? Why don't they all connect up? You know, et cetera, et cetera. I think this is an academic building. I believe this is academic offices of the University of Leeds. But I'm not certain about that, but it's a very, very striking building. Okay, pardon me for peering in my own slides, but this is the talk I had. So you'll use both the natural and the built environments, both the things that we've constructed in the world around us and the things that nature has created. So the point in here for the built environment, I think, is sort of clear. What is it I'm talking about? Why am I talking about the fire hydrant? Because there's a what? Oh, yeah, right, because my car is about to get towed. Ding, 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 ding. Actually, no. But a good guess. Why am I talking about the fire hydrant? Somebody's about to get, it's true. I hadn't even noticed that. Yes, the mathematics of law enforcement in New York City could be a very interesting topic. What's the optimal number of meter readers to maximize the revenue that the city gets? No, this is a serious question, and I guarantee you there is somebody in New York City government who has thought about the mathematics of that exact question. Because, well, anyhow, we won't get into all those stories. But anyhow, why am I talking about the fire hydrant? Symmetry, yeah. What kind of symmetry can you find in a fire hydrant that you don't find so much anyplace else, except maybe at the beach? Sort of a basic human kind of symmetry, actually, in a way. All right, I normally would leave you on the hook, but since we're out of time, five-fold symmetry. See the beach and a starfish, see it in the city, and a fire hydrant. The bolts on fire hydrants in most U.S. cities are regular pentagons. So you'll see that five-fold symmetry that you won't see other places. And there's a whole deal on that, which I'll show you. Well, there I'll give you links to. Okay. But now how can I use the natural environment in the scene? What's interesting and mathematically interesting in the natural environment in the scene? And again, because time is slow and because you may or may not know that, it's the tree right over my head. Does anybody know what kind of tree that is? Ginkgo, excellent. Ginkgo is a very common tree in a lot of urban centers in this country because it actually thrives pretty well in an urban environment, unlike many trees. And it's mathematically interesting because among all trees, its branches grow at right angles. Conifers also, but among non-conifers, a ginkgo is pretty much the tree where the branches are always going to be branching at right angles, and it creates a very distinctive profile to the tree. And so I can now recognize a ginkgo at whatever, 150 paces, because you'll come to recognize that profile is created by the geometry, by the special angle that the ginkgo uses when it sends out its branches. So we see mathematical phenomena in both the natural and the built environments. Okay, now I did talk about trusting your observations. So you're going to ask these questions, and then you're going to look carefully to try to get at the answers to those questions. And some of you may actually recognize this landmark. Has anybody seen this? What? North Park Mall, the Dillard's Fountain, North Park Mall. Bing, bing, bing. Excellent. Give her anyhow. So this was a stop in the North Park mall tour that we did, and I'm going to tell you exactly why now. It's because I was looking at the fountain, and I said, okay, fountain's got symmetry. The symmetry is probably going to be reflected in the structure of the fountain. Obviously, see with the outermost shape of the fountain is a regular octagon. Perfect. You see there's the central fountain. It's got a ring of small jets around it. So let's count the small jets. I got 16. That felt pretty good, right? It's respecting that eightfold symmetry. 2 little jets per side. So that's good. Okay. Now there's an outermost ring of jets. You can see on the right-hand side, you can see that in the outermost ring, there's a bunch of smaller jets that kind of spray into the water. I think they're off in the left-hand picture, but they're actually spraying in the right hand. Right at the edge of the blue, there's another ring of jets. And so I thought, oh, we'll count those 2, and we'll continue that eightfold symmetry pattern, right? Okay, so guess how many jets there are? It's 42. I'm like, whoa, there's somebody messed up here. And I thought, I should trust what I observed and think about it, and there's probably a story there. When you see something that seems out of place, especially mathematically and numerically out of place, there's probably something going on there. It probably has an explanation. So I said, okay, I gotta follow up. I gotta trust what I've seen. And so I went back and I used GeoGebra, a tool that some of you may or may not be familiar with. It's called GeoGebra, GeoGebra. And you can go to geogebra.org, download its free software, very easy to use. And I could just draw. I had done some more measurements. I got that the octagon was 124 inches on a side. So I just, in GeoGebra, just drew an octagon 124 inches on a side. We had done some measurements, which are represented by the two small circles on the lower right, of how far it was into that ring of spray. You can see I did a fit there. Notice it doesn't go through exactly because I discovered that a circle of radius 120 inches almost exactly went through those, as opposed to the 118-inch radius, which would have gone through them exactly. And I thought, yeah, most likely they built it with a 10-foot radius, not a 118-inch radius. So trust simple numbers. Okay, so we got a 10-foot radius circle there. And then I thought, okay, 10-foot radius circle, 120 inches. I can multiply by my good old friend pi, and I get 754-inch circumference. I divide that by 42. I get 17.97 inches. Ding, ding, ding. 42 because they're 18 inches spaced. A nice regular number, easy for them to construct. They put them every 18 inches, and that's where that 42 comes in. So now I can go there and do, in the tour I can say, guess where you can find pi here? Oh, 42, that's because of pi. And it really it wakes people up and it gets their attention. So that turned into a great story. Okay, on the hand, you should trust your observations, but you can make mistakes. And you should listen to the people on the tour. And actually, I found out the mistake from a participant on a tour that we did yesterday right here. This is One Arts Plaza. We talked about it in one of the two tours today. And I made this story about how, well, if you look at the big structure on the top left, it's clearly 6 units across. And just counting from where it kind of lines up with the squares on the bottom, you see it's only 5 squares up. So it couldn't, if the individual grid units are a square, it couldn't possibly be a square, and vice versa. I thought, isn't that interesting? We can solve this little mathematical mystery just by counting windows. And then at the end of the tour, one of the participants, actually the fellow who works at Nasher, pulled me aside and says, you know, I didn't want to say anything during the tour, but I'm pretty sure I read that top left structure really is a square. And he says, why don't you take a look at the building from a different angle? Oh, yeah, so look at it from a few blocks away, and you see that top square actually projects up exactly 1 extra unit, so it really is a 6x6 square. So, needless to say, I took that little part of the tour out of today's tours. So no, but the point is you will also learn from the people on your tour, just the way you're trying to help them understand information, they're going to help you understand information. And for example, I did one tour on the subway in New York, where I was telling people about also fire hydrants have the property that the bolts turn the opposite way. They're righty-loosey, not lefty-loosey. And I said, yeah. That's like the old subway light bulbs. I said, subway light bulbs? He says, yeah. In the early days, as a older person on the tour, the light bulbs in the subway had the opposite threads to them. They were righty-loosey. Can anybody think why they would have done that on the subway? Exactly. That way you can't steal the light bulbs and take them home because they aren't going to screw into. So that's a case where you can use the mathematics of mirror images in 3 dimensions as an anti-theft measure. Okay, so as I said, over time, as you're designing tours, you develop a toolkit. These are mathematical scenarios that you see repeatedly in the world. It takes time to develop that toolkit, but at walkSTEM and Museum Mathematics, we're going to help by we can all share our toolkits, and that way we can build faster. So I want to call your attention to a couple of websites. One is mathtours.momath.org, and with the indulgence of Koshi and walkSTEM and Cindy, the director, what I'd like to do, and if it doesn't happen here, we'll find the appropriate place, but there's already a blog at mathtours.momath.org, which actually has a whole nother talk on this exact same topic, so you can see my perspective from 18 months ago about how to construct tours, see the things that seem important, then so there's some overlap and some differences, and also start to collect a sequence of vignettes, of stops on math tours. What did you see in this picture? What was the mathematics of it? See some references, have the background information to develop that body of knowledge. And the other one that I want to call your attention to is another blog. It's called mathtourist.blogspot.com. That's the personal blog of a gentleman named Ivars Peterson, who is the communications director for the Math Association of America for many years. And he has his entire life been taking pictures of mathematical objects he's seen in the world around him. He has his own explanations of the mathematics, and so it's a gold mine of information, of things that you can look for in the world around you that bring out mathematical ideas. So these are going to be two resources that you'll be able to use to have a ready-made toolkit that'll help you create tours. And the final thing is edit, rinse, repeat. So the process we talked about making lots of questions, doing lots of observations, following up on the observations, coming up with these mathematical ideas. You're going to have way too much material for any tour. So now you're going to edit. You're going to say, what are the things that create the, well, what are some of the principles of editing? You're going to look at those questions that make it seem relevant to your audience, that actually have a mathematical outcome. Sometimes the numbers don't work out. Like, remember on one of the tours, we were in front of the Nash, we measured the doors. I thought, oh, maybe that's an interesting ratio. Calculated the ratio. Didn't seem to connect anything. You know, sometimes things, it's the real world. The real world is a fuzzy, crazy place. Not everything works out the way you expect. That's okay. So we'll edit that one out, like the square on the top of the One Arts Plaza. So you want to foster audience participation. You want to get things that will get them engaged, make the world come alive in a mathematical way. Those are the ones that you're going to select. And so the most important, or even more important than all these questions, is the things in the world that excite you. When you're passionate about mathematics, the audience in your math tours will be. So we probably don't have time for this to do a little exercise. Here's a structure that I didn't include, but I thought, oh, I really should do some math of this thing. You can see there's lots of possibilities. I'll just mention one. Oh, look, we got the same three-dimensional object. It looks very different from two different cross-sections, and talking about different cross-sections of the same object. But there's a million different mathematical topics you could use this. So I thought this would be a good one for like doing your own design, mini one-stop tour. We won't take the time to do it now, but hopefully get those ideas. I just want to thank you for listening. And, of course, if you're ever in New York, come and visit us on 26th Street. Hope you've enjoyed what we've done together today. I certainly have.